When your avoidant ex realizes that they've made a mistake, these are the 5 things that you can expect to happen. The first is that they are going to have an internal conflict. This is due to the fact that they don't want to admit that they've made a mistake in the first place, right? By them admitting this is essentially causing them to have to realize that they have been doing this throughout the entire relationship, and everything that they've told themselves as to why they are validated for being an avoidant was simply a lie. And this is something that they don't want to accept, because that is going to show them that they don't have control over themselves and over how they are feeling, and as well as the situations that they're in. So the moment that they have to confront this reality, that begins to make them feel very uncomfortable, because up until this point, they have been very confident that the way that they're acting is justified because it's everyone else and not them. And the funny part is that everyone else around them knows that this is only on them, but they are the only ones that are not accepting this. So they will essentially go through this period where they're kind of battling this two sides of themselves, right? The one side is essentially realizing how much they've allowed this avoidant attachment style to cause them to be this way and to lose you inherently, but also there's a side of them that's trying to justify their avoidant attachment style and to continue to have that essentially keep going. So they're going to have a very hard time battling these two, but typically that avoidance side ends up somehow winning this in the long run. Number 2 is indirect attempts to reconnect. Now, this is essentially their way to try to bypass these emotions, right? They're trying to test you here. They want to see if they can try to reach out to you through breadcrumbing to see if you would take the bait. And to them, if you respond to that, that's going to make them feel like they have you on the hook and you're available to them in some form or some way. And so they feel like they don't have to continue this conflict because they feel good now, right? They feel like you're still there and they can still continue this avoidant attachment style. They may act as if they've changed in the beginning just to secure this and to make you feel like they have made that change so you stay around longer, but this typically ends up being, again, their way of just trying to test the waters and see where you're at. They essentially just want to work things out without having to address any of the issues, right? They want to act as if nothing's wrong and just continue to keep pushing on with the relationship and continue to essentially have this cycle continue itself over and over again, because that's what typically ends up happening, right? They act as if they've changed, you let them in, they then get really comfortable, and then they push away once they feel like you are pushing too hard on them or making them feel vulnerable, which causes that cycle to go over and over again. But this is essentially their way to kind of test that waters to see if they have to actually do something about this or if they can continue the way that they are and you are just going to accept them for that. Number 3 is fear of rejection. Now, this is where they essentially also hold back from admitting this when they realize they've made a mistake, because they were afraid of how you're going to respond to this, right? They don't know what you're going to say. And to them, that is a biggest fear that they have, because they want to maintain control of not only themselves, but how other people react and respond and share their emotions, because those emotions and reactions are going to cause them to feel an unwanted emotion potentially, and they don't know how to address that, and they essentially don't want to deal with it. So instead of talking with you about how they're feeling and trying to work through things and, telling you how they realized they made a mistake, they would just rather avoid all of that and just continue to run this narrative as to whatever they're telling themselves, because to them, they can control that, right? They don't have to go to you and get permission. They just accept whatever they've conjured up and they go with it and run with it. But this stage only tends to stay for a certain amount of time, because again, those emotions start to come back up where they've realized they've made a mistake, and then it leads them into the next phase, which is number 4, and that is a possible reconnection or avoidance. Now, this is where the avoidant is going to make a drastic decision, right? They may try to go really hard into trying to make you believe that they have changed and they want to work things out. And there could be a part of them that actually is trying to do this, right? There are some chances where this avoidant is actually actively wanting to make that change, and you definitely do see that happen from time to time. But typically what you end up seeing happening here is that their avoidance attachment style gets activated again, and they just go off doing their own thing because they feel like they're fine and they don't have to deal with this. And whatever it is that they're telling themselves, that's typically what they end up doing in this particular stage, because they don't put in that work to actually try to work through these things, because it's going to take a lot of time to do that. And they've built such a strong fortress to make themselves believe that this way of being is legitimate and they're okay and they don't need to change anything about it. So it tends to be very hard for them to really break that down, and it only really happens over time. And that leads perfectly into stage number 5, and that is you either will see growth or they will repeat the cycle over again, right? This is not to say that avoidants don't go into the growth section. There are some avoidants who are able to grow from this and realize that they've made a mistake, and they work with their partners and maybe even introduce some type of professional help with a therapist or something like that. And then they're able to work through this, and you guys are able to get to a place where you can have a happy relationship again. But what you typically see happen is that the avoidant ends up going down the cycle again. This is where they may portray to you that they are growing and that they actually are making the steps to try to be better so that the relationship can be good, and they'll show you all of these things. And then the moment that you guys get comfortable together, you start opening up and expressing some emotions here and there, or maybe you try to deal with some of the conflicts that you needed to work through to heal and actually have a good relationship. This is where that avoidant attachment style really shows its head again. And they start to do all of those things over again, pulling away and putting you through this exact cycle over and over again. And it's the same story being played over and over again on repeat. Now, typically, this is what most people will experience here. And leads to a very important thing that I'm hoping that you're taking away from this video. And that is, you have to be genuine to yourself to understand, do you want to continue to keep going through this, right? There's a part of you that really knows the answer to this, and whether you are ignoring that part or you know for sure your answer here, you need to listen to that side of you, because you already know, right? Chances are you've put so much time, energy, and effort into doing everything that you possibly can to get this person to realize this avoidant attachment style is destroying the relationship and is why you guys can't have a healthy relationship, and you're trying to get them to make some changes, right? You don't expect them to change overnight. You know this is going to take some time, but they at least have to show you some effort here at they're doing what is necessary to work through this. And chances are they're just not. For whatever reason that they have made themselves feel as though this is the way to be. And you can have some type of empathy for them and understanding, because again, what typically happens here is that their caregiver when they were younger did not meet their emotional needs, and so they've had to adopt this way of being to make themselves feel better about that. And we all can understand that that could come from that. But the thing is that they have to try to work through this if they're going to have a relationship with you or really anyone else, right? Human connectivity, human love, vulnerability, all those things that you expect in relationship, although they come in many different degrees, that is something that is a part of life. That's a part of being in a relationship with someone. And they just want to avoid that because, again, they've had such a bad experience with that. But they really need to figure out what they need to do to essentially work through that. And they have to be the ones to do that. You can no longer help them here in the sense of telling them what to do, right? They have to genuinely want to do this, because it is going to be challenging. They're going to have to deal with a lot of different things that maybe they've never wanted to deal with ever in their life. But in order for them to get to a place where they can have a healthy relationship with you again, they're going to have to address it at some point in time. And whatever that time might be is when they decide that they're ready to do it and they actually make the steps to do that. And that might not be in the time frame that you expect it to, even if that's going to happen. So you have to really sit with yourself and understand what is best for you. And chances are what is best for you here is to figure out what you need to do to heal and move on from this. I hope you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.